Greetings and welcome back, everyone. I can't believe you're still listening. This is My Mental, place where I share memoirs, short stories, and pearls of wisdom wrapped around themes of mental health. I'm your host, Damon, along with my imaginary friends who still don't have names yet, and of course, you. Today, it's a more personal episode, and you're going to hear about some of my earlier moments in my life where I felt ashamed or embarrassed. But before all that, I must add that my mental can be found on any platform, but with Spotify's terms of service, if I wish to include their music in any episode, then you must find it only and exclusively on Spotify. So I'm glad he made it this far. Now it's time to put on your scuba gear, activate your air tanks, and get ready to dive into my mental.
I don't think I like the voice that or the voice or the sound of my voice.
Brought to you by BitBat Productions. Does anybody remember being in preschool? You're like 4 or 5 years old. You're coloring, you're fingerprinting, finger painting. Maybe you're not getting locked up yet. There's a lot going on in the limbic system of a 4 and 5-year-old. Your brain growth is exploding. It's where we start telling tall tales. Our imagination begins to soar. You're beginning to understand numbers, 3, 4, reading and creative play. That's the tender age where sharing and empathy tend to begin, and more complex emotions like jealousy, pride, and envy start taking shape inside the brain. What's a 4 or 5-year-old kid to do with all these jumbled and complicated emotions? And if you're just a kid walking around with shame and embarrassment, it's like walking around with a black eye. There's a whole lot going on for this kid, because as I grew older, there were plenty of moments of shame stacked up for me. Today's episode will be just explaining a few of those. Apparently, I had a black eye on picture day in preschool. Not sure how I got the black eye, but I do believe it was something innocent. Just playing around a few days earlier, something like that, and something hit my eye, leaving a mark. Maybe it was a fist. I'm not sure why the reason behind the black eye was so important in my life, and why it took up so much of my mental over the course of my time here on Earth. I wouldn't mind going back in time to remember how I got that black eye, so I feel like I didn't lie every time someone saw the picture in the album and asked me how I got it. A lump in my throat always preceded me saying, I don't know how I got it. No one seemed to know how I got it. I had this story in my head that everyone thought I was getting beaten at home, that I was getting my ass kicked on the regular. But that wasn't really the case. Or was it? All because one day I show up to school on picture day with a big shiner under my right eye. The teacher was passing out the photos after they were all printed and sealed in envelopes in class. She came up to my desk and unsealed the envelope with my picture. Do you know who this is? Sliding the picture under my chin. This is you, she goes on to tell me. And I remember being shocked. I actually didn't recognize myself. I replied with a shake of my head no, but not because of the black eye. It hadn't dawned on me that this was actually me. And for the first time, I was told something was me. I never saw a picture of myself before, and this one had me with a black eye. My first real photo was a bad version of me. My mother did not seem to remember that I had a picture day a few weeks back, and that I had a black eye going to school for picture day. She was obviously not pleased with the school picture. It looked like somebody at home beat the shit out of me. And surprisingly, the teacher never did ask me how it happened. That was a conversation between my mother and the school. My mom was more upset than anyone. She took it up with everyone else. She was upset at the school, raising holy war with the teachers for letting them take these atrocious pictures. She was telling everyone off, making me feel even more embarrassed. I was ashamed my mom acted this way. The poor teachers, shit. Even me for not telling her about it, like it was my fault. My mother's the type of person that made us change clothes when we got home from school. That looks were particularly important. She didn't like the idea that something did not look good in the home. Realizing now that no one taught me how to deal with feeling embarrassed, and I know there were so many more moments in my life after this one where I felt embarrassed or ashamed. But it was after picture day that I learned about the feelings of embarrassment and the shame for the first time. And these are feelings that you shouldn't have to experience, but it's feelings that we all have. When was your first black eye? Did you feel embarrassed when people looked at you? How did you first get your black eye? If you never had a black eye, I still want to know. How did you avoid that your whole life? You ever felt embarrassed by your parents? What's your earliest moments of being embarrassed? Do you have any pictures of yourself with a black eye? Make sure you share them and your answers with my mental. That's right. I'm asking you to share with me, or us. Share with us. Do us all a big favor. Share your black eyes. Share your embarrassment. We want to know. My mental is listening. There's a definition of embarrassment. It's the feeling of self-consciousness or shame or awkwardness, and it appears to stem from comparing ourselves with others in the world. That awkwardness down the road evolves to not trusting yourself in situations later down in life. Poor self-confidence and more awkwardness. Shame doesn't seem to serve a purpose other than to perpetuate more shameful thinking and doing. As a 5-year-old with a black eye, I saw myself in the world as being different than others in the world, that something was wrong with me, that something was off. Embarrassment is a black eye. It's a black eye. Black eye. You know, another memory has me recounting that I have this cousin by the name of Smokey. That's what everyone called him. He's doing life in prison now, murder, I think. Wasn't around when that happened, though. Otherwise, that would be another episode. The first and only time I met my cousin Smokey was when I went to SeaWorld. I think I was 10 years old. I remember the killer whales splashing us as we sat in the stands. And he once told me about a spot that we could go swing on a vine and go swimming. And then that day, he'd take me to this place after SeaWorld. There was this vine and it swung over the middle of a deep canal. I watched he and a couple of us friends took turns jumping in the water, climbing back up, jumping back in. It looked like so much fun, but I couldn't do it. I had to sit there on the side of the riverbank because I did not know how to swim. I felt out of place, like I didn't fit in, and those feelings overtook me. I had to sit quietly there while everyone was having all the fun. And I remember feeling like all when we left, it was my fault that we left, that I was moping, that it was because of me that we had to leave early, because I wasn't brave enough to jump in the water. It was my fault that we went home. When in fact, I don't know if that was any of the reasons at all. But it was the feeling of embarrassment that I had that I remember well. The feeling of not being good enough, feeling like less than. All my peers were better than me. This feeling was getting buried within me. My brain stacking these poor experiences and having them mean that I don't place myself into situations like that ever again. Essentially creating a fear that only ensures that it plays out in your life over and over again via several circumstances that keep popping up for some good reason, right? Always a good reason why those things keep popping up. One time I ripped my arm out. I ripped my arm apart by jumping a bicycle off a curb. Not just any bicycle, though, it was a mongoose. My entire left bicep was snagged from the iron tip and ripped a huge gash into my arm. I knew right away that something was wrong. I put my right hand and pressed my left arm really, really hard, holding it. It burned. I remember pacing quickly. My friends surrounded me and told me to go to his mother's house. I felt embarrassed that I messed up everyone's good time. But his mother would be home, and she would help. I was afraid to go to my mom's house because I would be in trouble. So we get to his mother's house, and his mother tells him that I should just go to my mom. She didn't even want me to take my hand off my arm. She didn't want to look at the cut or help. So I walked home still holding my arm as tight as possible, 4 blocks away. I remember feeling afraid to go home. I remember everything running through my head. My mom will be mad. I was embarrassed if I cried now. All these things spinning through my head. There was blood getting through my hand, dripping down my wrists and fingers. I was afraid to look at my arm. I knew something was bad, and it was. When my mother told me to take my hand off of it, I was afraid to, but when I did, I cried like a little baby. I let it all out. And it was at this moment in time, all I wanted was for my mom to comfort me and to console me and tell me everything was going to be okay. But instead, all she could do was scold me and say, "You did it this time, Damon. You really did it this time." And that was the reason why I didn't want to go to her house in the first place. I knew I'd get in trouble for getting hurt, and I lived with this kind of shame from early on, my friends. Nothing new for me. We all deal with it in our own way. Some way or another, we all deal with our own embarrassing and shameful moments and those memories that made them so. I spent a lot of childhood thinking that something was wrong with it. When my friends seemed to have houses and we had just an apartment, and they had pools in their backyard and we didn't even have a yard, they had nice cars, we took the bus or we walked everywhere we went. Most feelings of embarrassment and shame were class related, of the haves and the have nots, for which I found myself often comparing myself to. There's a lot of core complex emotions, and embarrassment and shame make the list. Every time I did an act of protection or avoidance, not taking chances in my life or taking a risk, wanting to stay in my safe place, it's because I do not want to be embarrassed. No one wants to be embarrassed. Feel like everything is better than your existence. You're just not good enough. You're not good enough. So learning to stop the negative self-talk was one of the hardest things to learn how to do. We don't know when the brain starts to wire these certain things, but it certainly registers these feelings of inadequacies very deeply. And it could take some time to rewire itself for better foundation that serves you better. So to learn to cut yourself some slack, there's a couple tips for coping with embarrassment and shame. Understand that the moment is in the past. The past is the past, and what happened happened, and nothing can change what happened. Accept it. Two, know that you don't need to apologize for feeling that way. It's not your fault to feel this way. It's not taboo to feel that way. You are a unique human being who is entitled to feel how you do. There's never a need to apologize. Three, talk to someone about your feelings. Couldn't be stated enough. Four, learn to find humor in a situation. Things tend to happen for a reason. Sometimes it's best to just laugh it off and move on. Five, understand that fear can be normal. It's what keeps us on the planet for so long. Fear is normal response to sometimes not knowing. And six, understand that perfection usually isn't possible. You're not always going to get it right, and sometimes it's better to have a few little downs before you achieve a new up. It will make the up a while lot more sweeter. One of the things that I came across in my internet hunt for my mental is what they call a warm line, where you can call a number and just talk to someone, not a doctor or a nurse, just another person that might have been through what you're going through and is there to listen and get you past the urgency. These warm lines are available in every state, and a directory of them can be found at warmline.org. If it's an emergency, call 911. My mental podcast is for entertainment only. I want to just say from the bottom of my heart, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you. Your unwavering support, encouragement, and loyalty have been the driving force behind my mental. Without your listenership, engagement, and feedback, this podcast wouldn't be what it is today. I'm continuously inspired by the community we're building together, sharing stories, ideas, and moments that connect us all. Your enthusiasm fuels my passion for creating content that resonates and adds value to your lives. I also want to thank Soundstripe for providing the background music tracks and to the amazing artists that contribute so graciously. Artists like Sam Marsh, Lunura, Ivy Blakes, Cody Martin, Salon Dejan, all of which you heard in the background on this episode. And next episode, I'm thinking about putting together something around the Mandela effect, an observed phenomenon in which a large segment of the population misremembers a significant event or shares a memory of an event that did not actually occur. So we will explore what is and what isn't next time on My Mental. Everyone, peace out.